Hey, everybody.
My hair is doing something wicked. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
We will wait a few minutes and let some people join us for coffee.
Loading, buffering.
Or tea.
Yeah. Do you ever start your mornings with tea?
No, ma'am. That is a sin. I always start my morning with the coffee. That is not right. Start your morning with that is not right. No.
Anyone, coffee drinkers, tea drinkers, water drinkers?
Coffee.
Everyone should be a water drinker in the morning.
Look, I have a cool mug. It says my mason jar was for my coffee. Yes. Because I need the biggest cup I can find. Good morning, guys. Welcome to our first September episode of Coffee. We will be started in just a moment, waiting for a couple more people to log on. We're excited.
We're very excited. I need a little more than that. A little more.
We're so excited to have you guys back.
Look at that. Christopher's a little more progressed in his coffee drinking.
Yes. Good morning, Dre. Good morning, Becky.
Hi, Velma.
Thank you for joining us. We're so excited. We have a great guest, some great announcements.
Live from New York.
Hey.
I'm sure that's been done before.
Not here, though. So look. It's new here. It's new. Okay, shall we get started?
Yes, let's get rolling. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Startup Coffee. We were once weekly, and now we're monthly. And we're Startup Tucson. We're a nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to transforming the region's economy through innovation and entrepreneurship. And we are so excited that you're here. Good morning, everyone. And we're going to jump in. So as you all know, we launched the Startup Guide, and it has been such a success. We've been hearing back stories on people using the Startup Tucson Guide to get plugged in and to find the resources that are meant for them. And we have some upcoming events to announce. So we've been running through the Startup Fundamentals. It's a 5-part series where we dive into starting or growing a business. It's perfect for the first-time founder or the experienced entrepreneur. And yesterday we finished 104. So next week is actually our last week in the Fundamentals series. And we'll be celebrating with a private demo day where all of the companies will be pitching. So if you would like to learn more, the Startup Fundamentals series is on our website, and you can sign up for the next series. It's actually starting October, I think, 10th or 13th. And then you can jump in. It's a great way to just get rolling with your business idea and start testing and start talking to customers. It's really great. And then we are launching the pilot of our tech prep, and you'll kind of hear information as it rolls out. I'm super excited again with our mentor, Jean Reagan, who is designing the program for us or alongside us. And then Startup Bites. So we used to have Startup Coffee weekly, and now we have Startup Bites. That is our weekly programming. It's just 15 minutes in the morning to level up your business. And that's with tips, tricks, and stories with Kenesha Raymond, our program manager, and then a special co-host. So next Wednesday will be fundraising tips. So if you need 5 tips to kind of get motivated, get into your fundraising game plan, definitely join us at 9 a.m. Okay, and then we have Innovation Economics. That's actually coming up in a couple of weeks. And we will have the Motown Music Accelerator coming from Detroit, Michigan. And that will be just a really cool conversation diving into music scene and business. And then action advising. So the first one is tomorrow, but it's all booked up. So action advising is where we invite a subject matter expert. It's someone who's a mentor in our Startup Tucson network. And then they open up these sessions where you can book 30 minutes with a legal professional or a finance professional or someone who's in operations or even someone who is in marketing. So we have that rolling. It's all signed up. You have to be a network member, which is always free to join. But you need to make sure that you do that first. And then Momentum Mentor Sprint will be coming after our Startup Fundamentals series. And this is for people who have run through our Startup Fundamentals programming. And it's 8 weeks where you just are super highly focused with a mentor to accomplish a goal. So I think that's all of the events and that's all of the programming that we have right now to announce. And we'll, of course, be announcing more updates. Introduction. So this is the time where you introduce yourself, let us know who you are, what you're working on in Tucson, and also what is keeping you going on your awesome business idea or project. So I'm Sophia Gonzalez. I'm the engagement coordinator, and Kenesha Raymond, our program manager, will announce and introduce our awesome Startup Coffee guest this morning. Passing it off to you.
Thank you. Good morning, guys. Welcome to another Startup Coffee. We're so excited to have you here, and we're so excited to have our guest here today. Today, we're welcoming Sara Adam, who is originally from Tucson, but is now located in New York. She's the co-founder and CMO of Nest Egg, a nursery brand with a mission to inspire parents, design visions, and children's imagination. So I'm going to invite Sara on, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about herself, and then we're going to get into the conversation. Good morning. Thank you for being here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So as you said, I grew up in Tucson. I went to UHS for high school. Also went to school with Dre along the path. And then went to college. And when I was in college, worked on kind of a startup idea with a friend. And that was not a very successful sort of foray into entrepreneurship, but I think it really taught me how much I loved working on something new, building something from scratch. And so I was always kind of looking for the next opportunity, trying different things. And then most recently, I got my MBA at Columbia. And while I was there, met my co-founder, and he had an idea based on some of his previous experience in venture about doing an e-commerce play in the nursery space. And I had happened to work in e-commerce in baby. I worked for Amazon's baby registry team and one of their subsidiaries called diapers.com. So we started working together on the idea, and we actually launched 2 weeks ago. So sorry if I'm going into too much detail here on this bio, but that's a little bit about me and kind of how I got from Tucson to New York and starting this company.
Perfect. Well, tell us more about the company, and then we'll kind of go through your process and how it came to be.
Yeah. So our big vision is to be a more kind of modern, updated version of Pottery Barn Kids or Creighton Kids that's designed a little bit more around today's parents' needs. And so our first line of products we launched 4 cribs, and they are designed to kind of raise the bar on functionality as well as design. So the 4 cribs that we have, they go from like a mini crib bassinet size to a full crib to a toddler bed. and are in really beautiful, forward, aesthetically pleasing designs. And from there, we're planning to expand out to other parts of the nursery. And one of the things that we're most excited about this company, beyond sort of the like beautiful product and front end, is we've built an operational back end that allows us to do zero or very low inventory. So this means instead of using kind of the traditional retail model where you buy kind of a huge batch of inventory, you put a bunch of cash into it up front, and then you hope it sells. Basically, we're able to list our products on our site and then only produce what we're selling. And that gives us great capital efficiency in terms of managing our cash, as well as a lot of like creative freedom to try really fun designs and offer a wider selection.
That kind of rolls into my next question for you, is because as we were talking earlier, previous to this, you talked about they're made to order. It's not like you go in and you pick up a crib, and the turnaround time is not that long. So can you talk a little bit more about the process of from ordering to actually getting it in home?
Yeah, so you will place an order on our site, and then we will send the order to our manufacturer, and they will produce the product and then ship it to the customer. And so they are, complete experts at what they do, and they've really kind of improved their process and efficiency. So in 2 to 3 weeks, you will have the item that was built just for you.
Perfect. That's amazing, because normally, like, even if you went and bought it from Amazon, it takes a little time to get it, but it's made to order. And talk more about the actual crib, because there's a whole transition phase that happens from beginning to end, correct?
Yeah. And so my brother actually was one of our first kind of parent, I don't want to say testers, because we did all the safety tests, but like kind of user testers. And so he has twins that are 2 and a newborn. And so they didn't really know where they were going to put the newborn. And so our crib has this mini bassinet formation. So they were able to kind of have a mobile crib situation as they were figuring out exactly how they were going to get their family all set up. And then he texted me yesterday that it was time to reconfigure the crib to a full standard sized crib. And one of the things that was important to us as we were kind of thinking about the product was really having everything included. If you've shopped for a crib, which I know it's a very specific purchase, but all of the different formations usually are a big upcharge, and then you'll pay for shipping again. So we wanted to include that right in from the start and really make it super user-friendly.
Perfect. That is a picture of Sarah's website. The cribs are gorgeous and very modern. We wanted to show you a little bit of behind the scenes, and you can look up her website as well as she's talking about the cribs. Those are the 4 cribs that they have, and she just launched on the 2nd. So the transition of the cribs, they're very affordable because you can use them for a very long time. And you're not carrying stock. So you're doing it a little bit of the lean way. Let's talk about funding. How did this product come to be? How did you get funded? Did you go the traditional way? Did you bootstrap?
So we did a little bit of everything. So for us, because we weren't buying a huge lot of inventory, we really didn't need to raise a ton of capital up front. My co-founder comes from venture capital, so he was like, maybe we should try to raise an institutional round. And I think consumer goods really fell out of favor kind of in the VC world. There were a lot of consumer brands that were, overcapitalized and not really performing to expectation. And so I think a lot of the institutional investors really wanted to see some level of traction before, writing a large check. And so we decided to do everything we could as there are certain things that like you cannot be lean about. Like you need to have a good legal foundation for your company. For us, like we needed to have insurance and we needed to have all of the safety testing. Like those were things that we could not be scrappy and lean about. But for pretty much every other element of the company, we found ways that we could be really scrappy, leveraging kind of my professional network, negotiating super hard, even sometimes like embarrassingly so. And we ended up raising a small seed round from a few angel investors. Columbia University has like a fund where they invest in MBA startups. So we raised a small round with like friends and family, angels, and Columbia. But honestly, that kind of didn't happen until we had already been working on the company for like 9 months, and we were pretty close to launch, and we probably would have been able to execute our launch with like our bootstrapped efforts before that.
Perfect. Going into that funding, are you looking to get funding later? Are you still looking to bootstrap it? How are you, because now you're proving your product. So how is that going to work out for you?
Yeah, I think like we're, while we initially kind of set out to raise an institutional round, we actually were advised by a lot of our kind of fellow founders that they would not do that and wait as long as possible. And so I think for us, like now we're in more of a position of strength to really be like one, choosy about finding the right investor. And then I think also, making sure that when we are looking to raise additional capital, it'll be for some big initiative, not like to survive. It'll be like, oh, we really want to expand and open like retail storefronts or, something that can be a big milestone for our company and really like help us level up rather than being in a place of desperation, which is not a place you want to be in when you're raising capital.
Yes, that is the honest truth. Wait on it and then kind of get up to that point. From the start of this process to now, how long has it taken you to actually launch the product?
About 1 year.
Wow. That's a good turnaround, especially since I guess you're not carrying so much inventory, so it's made to order, which is a great thing. You talk a lot about your co-founders, so tell us more about your co-founder, where you met, how you found them, and then this process working together.
Yeah, so we actually met very early on at Columbia because both of us, Columbia had an entrepreneurship club, and both of us were the same sort of leadership position of helping provide resources for founders. So essentially met each other through being like plugged into the general entrepreneurship community. And he had actually started working on the idea a little bit before me. And I didn't know him that well, but I was like really excited for him and wanted to be helpful however I could. So I made a few introductions and was always kind of like checking in. And at some point he was like, I'm looking for a co-founder, right? And I think we like, it's very tentative at first. We're like, do you mean that? How do we sort of test this out? And so I said like, well, why don't I help you for a couple of months and then we see how it goes. Just like kind of non-committal, like let's kind of wade into the waters of working together. And then I think we just like had a really great working rapport and very complementary skills. He's Brazilian and doesn't understand like the US market quite as intuitively as I do. And so I think we just realized like we made a really great team. And then, we had that tough like equity conversation, which is always going to be like a really like scary and challenging conversation. But when you can get to the other side of that conversation where both people feel really good, like that's the foundation you need. And then again, recommend having good legal counsel so that you can set up your partnership agreement with vesting so that, if in 1 year somebody decides like, I don't want to do this anymore, then the other person isn't left with like dead equity where the other person isn't pulling their weight. So I think like it definitely helped that he came from the venture world to really understand some of those things that I was a little bit less educated about. But like the thing I worked on in college, that was kind of the detriment. So I think having that really clear understanding up front, both of kind of what our roles were going to be and how our company ownership was structured, was very important. And I cannot imagine building this company without a co-founder. Like, no one else really understands the struggle except for him. And the things that we're losing sleep over, both of our partners are understanding as much as they can be, but no one really understands the crazy as much as each other. So it's really great to have a teammate, and especially someone whose skills are really complementary.
How important is it to find someone who has complementary skills and not the same skills?
I think for everyone, it's totally different. It's probably not great if you both are interested in doing the same exact work. Maybe if both of you have pretty similar skill sets, but one person is okay, no, I'm excited about working on these parts of the business, and the other person is excited about working on other parts, I think. But for example, if you were to be working in a creative company and both people wanted to have the final creative say, that's probably going to be more challenging. I think it's really hard to find a co-founder. So many things have to go right, the timing, the risk willingness, their sort of time availability. So I don't think there's one right way. But I think the main things is you have to be able to have hard conversations with that person and a high level of trust.
Very much so. The co-founder dating relationship can be kind of funky, but once you get there, you do actually get there. So you just launched on the 2nd. Congrats. That was yesterday.
So we actually launched on the 19th of August. So today is our 2-week birthday.
Perfect. Can you talk a little bit about the launch strategy, how it led up, and how it's going so far? And guys, drop your questions below. We're going to start taking questions soon.
So one of our big, and I'm seeing this question also in the chat. So one of our big things was we're a baby company, we needed to build trust. And so again, most things we decided to be scrappy for, but for our launch, we decided to make an investment and hire a PR firm that could help us get some of those big press placements. So one thing we did was, in terms of our product safety testing, we certified our products with a kind of safety certification group called the Juvenile Products Manufacturing Association. And it's something that parents, not everybody, but lots of parents are familiar with and they're looking for. And so that was a way that we could kind of build trust as a new brand in a really sensitive category. And then also having those initial pieces of press come out that provide that validation where people don't feel quite as nervous. And then another piece of the strategy was really opening up our kind of inbound communication channels for customers. So customers can text us, call us, email us, DM us, chat us on our website, and they're doing all of those things. And we've seen that when someone reaches out, they're almost certainly going to make a sale or purchase a product if we're able to kind of reassure them, answer all their questions. And so I think those are all pieces of the launch strategy. So that is a little bit of kind of what we were planning on. And then in terms of how it's going, I think we've been really excited by the results. We were expecting, we know that a crib, for example, is a pretty high consideration purchase. So maybe people spend a week or two doing research before they make a purchase. And so we were really happy that we've seen some really strong sales last 2 weeks. So I think it's like a really good indication that we found kind of strong product market fit for our designs and functionality.
That's amazing. And congratulations again. One more question for you. How do you feel that your background in Amazon Baby helped you transition into this company and now into the launch and opening and sales of it?
So I think like having a background in a specific industry can be like both a blessing and a curse. I think from like if we were raising institutional capital, I think like one of the big values was like investors look at that and they'd be like, oh wow, you like worked for Amazon in this industry. But to be honest, like the scale of Amazon is just so different than the scale of a startup. And so a lot of the things that you maybe became an expert in are so non-transferable that like I would say like if you have a background in a certain thing that you're working on, like figure out exactly how you can leverage that, whether it's like when you're raising money or your network. But if you don't have that background, like don't worry too much about it and try to get as educated as you can. But like at big companies like that, people are managing such a tiny piece of a business, whereas like an entrepreneur, you're managing the whole thing. I think for e-commerce specifically, it was very helpful for me to understand like the expected margins and kind of the metrics that you would look at to manage a retail business. And all of these things are things you could learn very easily, like with Google. So I don't think it's make or break, but I think it was helpful for me to kind of understand like the language of retail a little bit, and also like generally how you would judge the health of the business.
Great. Well, we're going to open it up for questions. So guys, drop your questions below. I believe Sophia should be coming back. So we're going to start with questions. Sophia, do you have a question first, or we're going to take one?
I do have a question. So you were talking about negotiating and you kind of made a little comment. So I was wondering if you could share what you've learned about negotiating and what you've learned about the worth of your business, yourself as a co-founder and your role.
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the hard things with negotiating, especially for us at the beginning, was a lot of the people that we were working with were former colleagues of mine. So to do our branding, we worked with one of my former colleagues from Amazon who had started her own agency. And I think the tension is like you want to keep that relationship strong and you want that person to be like excited to do great work for you, but you also want to be like really savvy and also realistic about your budget, because something like branding, for example, you could hire, Red Antler, who did like the Casper branding, and they charge, upwards of $250,000. And I know a lot of companies have done that. It's not a very lean approach. And so we were just really upfront with, this is our budget. Like, could you work with this? And I think that kind of helped. And then I always try like, when you feel like you're really paying less than maybe something is worth, to just be like really easy to work with and, a nice person. I think that helps. And then for things like PR, that was another thing where like we couldn't really afford a traditional agency. Like a lot of them make you sign 6-month commitments and it's like 10 to 20K a month, which was not a realistic expense for us. But it sounds really bad, but because of COVID, like that was the first expense a lot of companies cut was PR, and they needed like new clients and were willing to work on like much shorter timetables. So we negotiated a 2-month contract with our PR firm instead of a 6-month contract, and at a much lower rate than they typically charge clients. So I think you can really get a long ways with negotiating, and it's definitely like a balance of like just making sure, especially like, with your suppliers and manufacturers, like making sure that relationship is healthy. And then another little piece of negotiating advice is like I know I said it's great to have a good lawyer, but like legal counsel is like super expensive. And every time our lawyer sends us an invoice, we say like, can you reduce it? And they always do. So just like always ask, especially when you're dealing with like lawyers, definitely ask.
And then, so that was negotiating for deals and contracts with your company and another company. And then, could you also talk about negotiating as a co-founder, that beginning conversation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I remember it very clearly. I think like it also helped that my co-founder, like I said, had venture capital experience, so was like kind of familiar with how like a cap table works, and like he from the beginning was like, okay, I want us to leave aside like this amount for advisors, so we never have to like argue like whose equity is like this advisor share coming out of. We set aside a pot for future employees, so that again, like we don't have to dilute ourselves when we make hires and want to incentivize them with equity. And then he sort of like laid out his thinking of like the number that he thought was right. And then it was definitely like in range for me, but it was on the lower end. And so then I was like, I need to think about this. And then, we pushed for like numbers that we both felt good about. And then once we got there, we have not talked about it again. So it's nice to just like, it's a difficult conversation, especially because like I said, when you're negotiating, especially in your co-founder relationship, like you need to protect the relationship, and you also need to advocate for yourself. And so I think you also need to know exactly like where your own boundaries are. Like if I'm below this number, am I going to like start to become resentful, or am I going to feel like a true like partner in this venture? So I think it's hard. But like once you kind of cross that bridge, it's very, you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Sounds like the best part is when it's over.
Yeah.
Okay, just looking at some questions here.
Here's one.
So Cynthia Holmes has a question. How could you talk about Nest Egg's order to the delivery process?
Mm-hmm. So it varies a bit by different category and what the actual product is. So it's around 2 weeks. And I think, pregnancy is like kind of this ideal time because you don't need most of the stuff right away. I think we're finding with the cribs that parents are just like so excited about setting up their nursery that they kind of want it as soon as possible. But I think for like other pieces, people might have like a higher tolerance of waiting. But it's a couple of weeks. And then we have the thing that we're doing that's like really crazy for e-commerce is we're actually shipping directly from Brazil. And so we have a great rate with FedEx that we've negotiated where we get 3 to 4 days shipping for the continental US. And so once the product is made, then the shipping is pretty efficient and we don't have to spend money like on warehousing. So that is kind of how that works. And yeah, like for nursery specifically, I think that's why we really gravitated towards that category with this model, because it is like, you have this long sort of time in which you can make the purchase and you don't actually need the product right away.
That's great. One last question for you is, what advice would you give to new entrepreneurs?
And I want to tag along that question. Also, it's like, how can an entrepreneur know that kind of what do you need to be an entrepreneur, and how do you kind of question yourself with that? So the same question, but.
So I think the advice that I would give honestly is like learn about company structuring. It sounds really like boring and not important, but the first sort of venture I tried was with a friend that I knew from high school. And we essentially like had a really hard time figuring out an equity agreement that made sense. And just like having those protections, like the vesting. I also have a good friend who started a company, and I don't know if they worked for 4 years and the vesting was over, but essentially at some point his co-founder said like, I'm done. I don't want to keep doing this. But he owned half the company. And so, you know, my friend was working full time, receiving no pay, like just really going uphill alone. And like knowing that if he succeeded, his co-founder was entitled to like half of his efforts. I think you just really want to make sure that you understand how that works, because not that anyone's like trying to screw you over, but you know, you just want to make sure that you have a good foundation so that if your company fails or if it's successful, like that's not going to be the thing that you could have easily, you know, done a little bit of research on and like put yourself in a much better place. And then in terms of like being an entrepreneur, I think I don't think there's like any particular archetype, but I think like as I've been working on Nest Egg, like one of the things that I've noticed that I think has like been helpful for us, that's part of my personality, is I like to just like pursue open opportunities, even if I don't know exactly like what's going to come of it. So like we have a few different like brand partnerships that are in the works that are just kind of the result of reaching out randomly through somebody's website, or, you know, things where you have no idea, like, oh, this would be cool, but this person probably won't respond to me, or, you know, I have no idea what kind of thing we might do with this partner. I think like just pursuing a lot of those different avenues creates a lot of opportunities for your company to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Ray has a question.
So I think for shipping, this is like a little bit of a unfair advantage of ours that's not replicable. I didn't like fully explain, but so my co-founder was like working on this idea because in his time in venture, he encountered this Brazilian company that was doing something very similar to what we're doing. And he like fell in love with the business and was like, I want to start this in the US. And he had built a really great relationship with the founder of that company. So we actually brought him on board at Nest Egg. And so he helped us negotiate a great rate with FedEx because he does pretty significant volume with them for his company. So I think shipping it's a challenge. And like, even though we have that great rate, I think this morning my co-founder told me that we got a kind of crazy invoice from them. So I don't know that we have a great answer on that. I think like it's something that we're going to have a hard time with, especially because of COVID. They're doing a lot of upcharges and surcharges. I think probably the best like advice for e-commerce specifically is make sure you have a rich enough margin that you can take a little bit of a hit on shipping. And like, I think there are, like for us, we really wanted to do free shipping, but I think there are a lot of brands that are not doing free shipping and still being successful. They either have like a high threshold that encourages people to build baskets before they check out, or people just want the product enough that they are willing to pay for shipping. So I think it's a challenge for everyone.
Yes, shipping is a beast. Thank you for being here with us today. We truly appreciate it.
Yeah, this was very, very fun. I love the setup and everything with the backstage. That was exciting to be waiting to kind of come on scene.
Yes. Well, if you guys have no more questions, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Startup Coffee. Sophia, what do we have coming up next week?
Next week is Startup Bites, fundraising tips in 15 minutes.
I think we're doing fundraising and launch tips next
and
week.
Launch tips.
Yes, and that is with Natalie Frank, the co-founder of the Rising Tide Society. So join us at 9 a.m., not 8:30, 9 a.m. And if you're interested in signing up with Action Advisors, make sure that you go on the website. You have to be a member. So if you're not a member, you need to be a member so you can get...
It's free too.
It's completely free. Thank you guys again for joining us. Sarah, stay right here with us, and we will see you next week for Startup Bites. Bye, guys.
Bye.